Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 13th, 2024. It's 3 p.m. This is a City of Prescott City Council voting meeting. Mayor Pro Tem, do we have any announcements or introductions?
We have a ton of them today, so be patient, everybody. Anyway, let's get started here. The city's bulk item pickup is starting soon. It's time for this year's bulk item collection event. Crews will be coming through each neighborhood to collect household items that do not fit in your regular trash bins. This timing will happen between August 19th and October 4th. This event is for the City of Prescott residential trash customers only. Commercial business and communities on dumpsters are not eligible. Remember to bag, box, bundle, or tie your items and put them out by the curb by 6 a.m. on the Monday of your designated collection week. To find your week for this special bulk item event, visit our website at www.prescottrecycles.com. Then there's a congratulations that needs to go out to our finance department. The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, called GFOA, has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Prescott for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year that just ended June 30th of 2023. This is the 42nd consecutive year the city has received this award. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. Congratulations to our finance department for their outstanding achievement. And I think we have some here. Very good, Mark. Yeah, and Lars, you're learning well, I'm sure. So this is a call out from the library to authors. The Prescott Public Library is inviting authors to apply for the local author fair on Saturday, November 2nd from 11 to 2 in the Founders Suite. Local authors who write books for any age may apply for a space to promote and sell their work. Applications are available now and due by September 20th. Space is limited. For more information, visit or call or ask the librarian desk at 928-777-1526. We'll see you at the Prescott Public Library. This is a reminder that the City Council meeting will take place Tuesday, September 10th. Let me see, that doesn't sound right. I think that, okay, I see what it's saying here. Tuesday, September 10th, we will resume our normal twice monthly schedule in September. For a list of all upcoming city meetings, go to prescott-az.gov and select boards and commission meetings from the homepage. And finally, if you have children, there's a wonderful Critter Camp Out for Cancer that will be happening real soon. If you're interested, it'll be September 7th, by the way, at 4 o'clock. Camping out pricing, adults are $39, children from 3 to 12 are $29. One adult is required for every 2 minors. This includes a camp in at the zoo, midway, luminaria ceremony, a pancake breakfast, and admission to the zoo on Sunday, September 8th. If you want to go, it's the evening. Please call. It's from 4 to 8:30. You may call 928-778-4242. This is a joint fundraising event benefiting the American Cancer Society and Relay for Life. So everybody give them a call, 928-778-4242. Your kids will have a ball. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and I see quite a few people taking notes there. That's great. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Scott Savage of the Prescott Cornerstone Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to gather today, and we thank you that we live in a country with so many freedoms and we don't take for granted, and we thank you for those who've sacrificed so that we can enjoy those freedoms. I pray today for this meeting and for our leaders. You tell us in your word that if anyone aspires to greatness, that they should be the servant of all. And so I pray that you would impress upon our leaders the reminder that they are here with the tremendous privilege to serve our community, to lead us with wisdom and discernment. And so I pray that you'd guide their decisions today. I pray that you'd help them to make the right call, even if it's not the popular call. And I pray that you'd be present in this meeting with how it's carried out. We thank you for allowing us to live in this beautiful place that we call home, and we give you the glory for the wonderful creation you've made that we enjoy here. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in pledging allegiance to our great republic and this beautiful flag that represents it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start off with roll call, please.
Mayor Good,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi,
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth,
Here.
Councilman Gambogi,
I am here.
Councilman Montoya,
I am still here.
Councilman Moore,
Here.
and the record will reflect that Councilmember Rusing is excused from the meeting.
We'll now move on to the open call to the public. City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement. Residents may comment and address the council regarding matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total, with the following stipulations. Citizens will be limited to addressing the council on the same topic only 4 times in total. If a topic has been addressed more than 5 times by different speakers, the mayor may limit future discussion on the topic, and topics of a primarily national concern may be limited at the discretion of the mayor. I do not have any comment cards for the open call today, Mayor.
Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone on the council wish to pull any items from consent agenda items 7A through I?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull item 7A, I believe. Yes.
In that case, I'll entertain a motion for the remaining items.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda items 7B through 7J.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
My computer is frozen, so if I can just get an all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to amend the July 9th study session minutes. There was a couple of requests that we had and discussed as a group about first having a better understanding of what functional population means. And the second one was really trying to understand the drivers behind the different and very highly varying levels of percent change from the 2019 rates to the proposed rates across both residential and commercial. And so I spoke yesterday with our finance folks. I spoke with our city clerk, and people were amenable to work on following up on both of those items. And I think, Sarah, you have a proposal.
I do. So just as a point of reference, the revision to the minutes will be to the study session only. It will be on page 4, directly under the information regarding the IIP for police. And if the motion is made with the amendment, it will read as follows. Councilwoman Fruworth stated that the council and public would benefit from a clearer understanding of functional population, as well as the percent increase differences between residential and non-residential categories. She would like to see additional information regarding the drivers of these differences be available at the next meeting to make it all more understandable. That will be the only revision to the minutes.
Councilwoman Furworth, is that acceptable?
Yes, it is acceptable.
Very good. Then I'll entertain a motion for amending the minutes as read.
I make a motion to approve the July 9th executive session, the voting meeting, and the study session as amended and read.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
We'll now move on to the consent ordinance.
All right, bear with me. We've got a few here. So consent ordinance is for adoption of items 8A through 8D. 8A, adoption of ordinance number 2024-1869, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending Prescott City Code Title II, Chapter 2-1, Section 2-7-4, establishing the Prescott City Court warrant fee. Item B, adoption of ordinance number 2024-1864, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a public utility easement from the Arizona State Land Department, authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance. Item C, adoption of ordinance number 2024-1865, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the abandonment of an unused utility easement currently held by the city of Prescott, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said abandonment. And item D, adoption of ordinance number 2024-1868, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of an emergency vehicle access easement on parcel 106-49-093, commonly known as 680 Driftwood Court, Prescott, Arizona, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said easement.
Now that was impressive. Does anyone wish to pull any of those consent ordinance items to be discussed or voted on individually? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt those as in mass.
Mayor, I move to adopt consent ordinance items 8A through 8D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Very good. We'll move on to a regular agenda, item 10A.
First, we have a liquor
We
license.
have a liquor license,
Which is
9A.
item 9A. Public hearing and consideration for a new Series 12 restaurant liquor license application from Francisco Garcia, applicant for Frank's Restaurant, location 410 West Goodwin Street. The application fees have been paid. The signs have been posted for the required 20 days. Staff has reviewed the application and determined that it is in compliance, and no public comments have been received.
Very good. Is the applicant present?
I don't see him.
No. Francisco's now Frank's Restaurant. So I'll entertain a motion for adoption of this liquor license. We have actually, what, 1, 2 motions.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. Motion is second. Please vote.
Mayor, I
Passes
move
6-0.
to approve, make no recommendation. Let's see, what does this say here?
Approve.
Move to approve liquor license number 299876 for a new Series 12 restaurant liquor license application for Frank's Restaurant, location 410 West Goodwin Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, now we'll move on to regular agenda item 10A.
Public hearing regarding proposed increases to City of Prescott development impact fees pursuant to A.R.S. Section 9-463.05.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm A.R.S. Johnson, Deputy Finance Director for the City of Prescott. The public hearing today is the next step in the process as the city amends the current impact fees for development. I'll provide a little bit of background to benefit the public hearing here. First, to understand what a development impact fee is, it's collected at the time of building permit issuance. It's levied or charged to pay for construction of infrastructure improvements that benefit the new development and also are necessitated because of the new development. The funds cannot be used for operations, maintenance, repair, or to correct existing deficiencies. As required by state statute, the city has retained a consultant to do the study, A.R.S. A.R.S. has been around since 1993 and has conducted studies like this for hundreds of different utilities and municipalities. The impact fee setting process is very extensive. As you see on the screen, we can see some of the milestones we've gone through. Staff started working with the consultant about a year ago. We started discussing and providing data. So you can see it takes a very long time to go through the process. The process is two phases. One is to first study the land use assumptions, that's LUA. That's basically the 10-year growth plan. And then we plan what infrastructure would be necessary to serve that development. That's the IIP. The second phase is to then translate those into a fee that can be assessed at time of building permit issuance. So the most recent event was the July 9th workshop, where A.R.S. came to present to council the detail of their fee report. As a result of that, there was some follow-up, as was mentioned earlier in this meeting, requested. The consultant did prepare a memorandum and attached it to the council agenda. We also published the fee reports 30 days prior to this meeting as was required by the state statute. The follow-up items from July 9th covered the functional population assumption. This study contains a lot of different factors and assumptions that are data-based, and those are based on reputable data sources and industry best practices. Functional population is one of those, and it strictly is used to allocate the growth cost between residential and non-residential. So after the public hearing today, the council will need to take action by state law between 30 and 60 days from now. So that's scheduled for October 8th. And then based on that action, the effective date would be for the amended fees would be January 1st of 2025. Up on the screen, you'll see an example of what the fees would look like for a 2,500 square foot single family residence. This includes both the non-utility impacts as well as the utility impacts. It's important to point out here that the proposed column that the consultant has prepared, it is the maximum that's supported or the maximum that council could adopt. There's options there that council could adopt variable or, lesser amounts. And with that, that's the background I wanted to provide. I'll turn it over to you, Mayor, to start the public hearing.
Well, thank you, Lars. That's a kind of a brief summary. I think most of the people who attended the meeting on July 9th had a much more detailed presentation on how these numbers were arrived at. Anyone on the council have any questions or comments for Lars? I know we have a lot of public comment. No? Okay. All right, then I guess we can go to public comment at this time. City Clerk?
Bonnie McMinn.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm actually making this statement on behalf of Deb Thalassides. She was not able to attend the meeting today. She lives at 1972 Meadowbrook in Prescott. I'm unable to attend the City Council meeting and wanted my concerns regarding the impact fee adoption to be on the record during this public hearing. During each of the past 5 occasions, the City Council has considered adopting impact fees dating back to 2001. The same arguments have been made as justification for lowering the fee recommended by objective calculations performed by an independent consultant. First, you and past city councils have heard that higher impact fees will prevent affordable housing. Prior councils have adopted lower than recommended impact fees consistently since 2001, and yet here we are in 2024, lamenting the lack of affordable housing. Lower impact fees do not promote affordable housing. We do not need any more data on that point. Lowering impact fees simply gives all new growth, affordable or not, the same financial break. And by doing so, the costs not covered by impact fees paid by new growth are shifted to current residents. If the city is serious about encouraging affordable housing, please consider using separate and measurable strategies that include fiscal accountability. A second argument you and others may hear is that the increase before you should be phased in. The problem with that is that impact fees have been consistently discounted since 2001, and particularly during the last adoption in 2019. I would argue that we've been phasing in these increases for the past 23 years. Unfortunately, it's time to bite the bullet and charge the recommended impact fee amount that reflects growth paying its fair share. Thank you for your consideration.
That's all, Mayor.
Well, I will say that looking back on all those different opportunities to adopt appropriate impact fees would not have led to us being in this position that we are. Obviously, we have a proposed tax increase, Proposition 478, and I want to make sure that this is not confused with these impact fees, because 478 gives us a look back and it tells us what should have been done but wasn't, and therefore now we're trying to utilize those additional revenues to try to catch up. But impact fees are designed just to deal with future growth and growth only, not to upgrade any current systems, only to be able to provide the necessary utilities, police and fire safety, streets that are going to be required in these new growth areas. So you'll see that police and fire and even streets are substantially increased as a percentage because we're expanding our road networks. We're having to provide more police services in these new areas, and we're certainly having to provide more police, fire protection, firefighters, etc., into these growth areas. So that's how we come up with these proposed new numbers, because we're growing broader with a larger number of new homes in these proposed development areas than we were in 1972 or 1992. We didn't have the vast numbers of large developmental areas that we're seeing right now, and we have to be prepared to be able to provide the services for those areas. So that's how the calculations come out, and they're so dramatically large because we're growing at a dramatic rate. And these impact fees are only reviewed every 5 years.
Yeah.
So we have to project out what our next 5 years demand is going to be and make sure that we have the impact fees to cover the growth in those areas and be able to provide the infrastructure and the public safety protection in these new growth areas. Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community, and there's a few things that have been consistently said incorrect. These impact fees, that's why they're called impact fees. They're to mitigate the impacts of growth. It doesn't pay for all of it. But I venture to say, had we been imposing these impact fees going back to 2019, we would not be where we are today in our need with just the two of those items on there, police and fire. But I can tell you right now, some of the things that I've heard said are flawed. We have been living in a community that has been very desirable. And if you look up here, if you average between the current impact fee, $11,423 to $19,341, I'm going to tell you right now, for that $8,000 difference between what is current and what is proposed on a $500,000 house, that is nothing for these developers to pay to contribute to the impacts of their growth. People have complained, well, this gets passed off to the new home buyers. Yes, that's exactly right, because it's the new home buyers that are making the impacts. Remember, if we decide not to pass this impact fee, those charges that are non-negotiable for fire and police get passed on to the taxpayer at large. This is a way to mitigate the impacts of growth. We have been remiss in this city to not impose this impact fee. Coming from my background as a builder, I didn't really like to pay these impact fees either, but I saw a need, and I didn't get a choice. It's amazing to me when I found this out in Prescott, Arizona, that we somehow were able to wrangle out of paying an impact fee for police and fire. We have, as a municipality, no choice. We have to provide police and fire services along with water, sewer, and all the other things. So if you have a developer that's going to develop 10,500 homes or whatever it may be down to 250, why, I'm asking you, why should they not pay their fair share? It's an impact fee, we're allowed to do it, and it's about time. Right now you're looking at the needs for police and fire. It wouldn't be as high today had we been collecting that money starting back in 2019 and even before that for a while. So I am completely in favor of this. This is to offset everything that's going forward. The reason that, the impact fee is not going to have anything to do with the fact that the market slowed down. As we all know, if there's any realtors in here, everybody knows the reason that things have slowed down is not because of the impending impact fee. It's because the interest rate has reached an all-time high. Building materials have reached an all-time high. But we have to do whatever little thing we can do to mitigate the impacts of growth. This is the way we can do it as a city. So this has to be done, and I hope everybody gets behind this. And also the 478, the tax that's coming up. We've got to play catch up with that. So these impact fees going into the future are going to play a large part into helping out with that in about 10 years or so. So thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I read the email from Deborah Thalassides, and I listened to the statement that Bonnie read, and I think they're one and the same, if I'm not mistaken, this email. And I really don't know what the justification for the statement is that impact fees have no impact on affordable housing. I don't know where that information comes from. And I personally am having some heartburn with the amount of the impact fee because as a council, we have stated that workforce housing is one of our highest priorities. And I do not feel that we can achieve workforce housing successfully in this community with an $8,000 increase in impact fees. I really have a problem with that personally. We're looking at teachers, nurses, so many policemen and firemen that don't live in our community because they can't afford to live in Prescott. And yet we say we want to make workforce housing a priority, but we're going to increase the impact fee to $19,000. That just, in my opinion, makes it so much more unaffordable. And so I personally feel that while an extensive amount of research and work has gone into calculating these numbers, I feel that it's premature to settle on a number of 19,000, and that I feel it needs to be lowered, or there needs to be some accommodation or recommendation for allowances for workforce housing particularly.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciated the follow-up memo that we got from Ref Telus. I think it answered for sure. It was a big aha about what functional population means. It's not about workers moving in and moving out of the city. It really was considering all of the retirees and the entire population. So I am now absolutely satisfied that I understand functional population and how that's being applied here. I appreciated the analysis they did to help us understand the drivers of the changes between current and proposed when it came to residential. And in that analysis, and if anyone has it, it's on page 209 of the packet, they get into much depth about how, starting from the current fee, what were the pluses and the minuses drivers to get us to the fiscal 25 fee. And what I found fascinating about this is the by far, piggybacking on what Council Member Cantelmi was saying, was about changes in unit costs of facilities. The changes in costs is driving half or more of these changes. So anybody who's out there understands how much more we're paying for food, how much more we're paying, and we're seeing it playing out here as well. So I understood that. Demographic changes was another that had an interesting twist to it, and differences between police and fire. And so yesterday I was meeting with finance, trying to better understand that. Lars was doing a nice job of starting to scratch my itch on what I needed, but I think I still need more in that regard, because I think it's important to understand what demographic changes are going on, because we're seeing the same exact thing of how demographic changes are also affecting 478. As our population has grown, we're a 60-year-old community now. It's grown 7% in only 5 years. We are aging quickly. And I think how that's playing out in the sizes of homes, and how, what you were sharing with me yesterday was it used to look like the small homes were 1 people, 1 point something people. The big homes were the big families. And frankly, with a wealthy retiree base moving here, it's kind of flipping and almost averaging out now. You can have lots of families in the smaller square foot, and you can have 1 or 2 people in the bigger ones. So I think better understanding demographics, and we talked about that yesterday, and you're doing more work. And so I hope between now and October, I'll better understand that. So I need to understand things so that I feel confident in my votes. And what I'm missing, as we discussed in the minutes change this morning, is I don't have those same residential drivers for commercial, for the non-residential. And as those that were here recall, the restaurants and retail had a tremendous percent change compared to the other industries, offices, industry, et cetera. And so again, because our retail and our restaurants are important, and maybe even will be an important driver to our overall economic development plan over the next 1 to 3 years or so, I just want to, again, understand the same analysis we got from Ref Telus on residential, we need on non-residential, and I think we need to internalize that. So those were my concerns that I'm still looking to get to the point that I can confidently vote yes or vote no before I know for sure. Can I move on to one more? It's a different area. So the only other one that I wanted to question, because we got some pre-reading package materials from various members of the community, and the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona sent us a memo, and I was reading it. And one thing I wanted to ask city staff was that in page 2, it says that there are certain examples of items in the city's LUA, IIP, and DIF studies with a percentage assigned to growth impact fee eligibility that appears to conflict with state statute. So I wanted to ask our attorney and our staff if they've had a chance to internalize the exact named projects, and are you still confident that it does not conflict with state statute before we move forward? I have a feeling it won't make a huge impact, but it could. So I just want to get confirmation.
Yes, we did receive that memo as well and have read it, and I think Public Works would be appropriate to address those particular projects in question. They were regarding the maintenance, street admin maintenance facility building, and I think the intersection improvements.
Yeah, the streets infrastructure improvement plan included the street maintenance admin building and the street maintenance snow facility. They believe these should be itemized as maintenance costs under various state statutes and therefore not included to have new growth pay for a portion of that. So that was the first one, and I'll be happy to read the other ones if you need me to.
Regarding the street admin building and the snow facility, those are actually not maintenance costs. It's contemplating expanding the building itself. So the statute does allow, and city attorney can also provide input, but the statute does allow for facility improvements, just not the maintenance expenses of those buildings once they're complete.
Yeah, and to answer your question clearly, yes, we think they're appropriately included. The improvement to the signalization increases capacity of those roads. It increases the amount of cars that can travel those roads. So it is related to growth. It gives that capacity, which is what the statute requires, the additional capacity in the system. Again, as Lars mentioned, the admin building is new admin building is larger, bigger square footage because of the additional need for additional personnel to deal with additional roads, and the same thing with the snow maintenance facility. The roads come into the system, we got to clear the snow from them, so that increase in the capacity of that facility is appropriate to include.
Thank you. So the next one was all about Prescott Lakes Parkway and the Sundog Ranch Road intersection improvement, Willow Lake Road, Willow Creek Road, and the 4 Points intersection improvements. All those projects total a collective of $798,000 assigned in the draft to future growth. Do you believe those are within statute?
Yeah, absolutely. Signalizations are needed because of the increased capacity needs on the roads, and they allow more travelers from the growth. So they are appropriate.
Thank you very much. You answered all my questions.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I share some of Councilman Moore's heartburn on the impact for workforce housing. I think part of what is a concern for me is that I get the sense that we are asking a lot of the community at times, and things that I support. Prop 478 is a perfect example. I support it, but we're asking for a pretty significant increase in sales tax revenue. At the same time, we've recently done a pretty significant increase on water rates and trash rates. At the same time, we're already seeing the impacts of businesses who are deciding not to do business in Prescott, and the very real outcomes of that, of lost revenue for the city as it relates to that. And where I sit, I kind of just, each of us sits here and serves a term, but what we're really challenged with doing is having a greater vision for the future of Prescott. And I think part of what we have to ask ourselves is what exists in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and how do we nurture economic viability in this community? And that's a bit of a different take from Eric's take, I think, in the sense that if we don't have the workforce to support it, businesses will leave. And we already have at least one neighboring community that is pretty aggressively positioning themselves to seize those opportunities away from us. And I guess my biggest hesitation is that I want to make sure that we don't cede ground and that we aren't leaving opportunity behind, so that when it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that we're not the smaller community that's competing for scraps and the bedroom retirement community, because I don't think that's a viable community, and I don't think, frankly, it's a sustainable community. That being said, I've spent a lot of time talking to staff about impact fees, and I think to a person, they basically all use the term necessary evil, which is to say that nobody really likes it, but it is what it is, and it is something we have to contemplate. I wonder if there isn't some component of phasing it so that it blunts it. I wonder if we missed an opportunity to do the same thing with the water rates, because I think what the general public will see is a 70% increase on water rates. They will see a 0.95% increase on taxes, sales tax, and they will see a massive increase on this, and they will say, you guys are tax and spend council. I mean, they're already saying those things about us. And I wonder if we shouldn't at least contemplate moving a little bit slower on this. And now, again, I'll go back to what I said a moment ago. It's a necessary evil. I think, no one is arguing that we not do impact fees. But a little contemplation around it, I think, is warranted, in my opinion, if for no other reason, as Councilmember Fruith has kind of demonstrated, even a very capable and, highly regarded outside consultant had some things that they left unanswered in their initial presentation to us. So those are just my thoughts. I come back to that necessary evil thing. I don't want to pump the brakes on this completely, but I think a little bit of contemplation is worthy. Thank you.
Councilman Gambogi.
I'm not here to render an opinion today, but I think there's some things we ought to consider, and I'd like to hear more from the public. I see this as a tactic to address a symptom, but we're not really looking at the root cause. The root cause is the marketplace is out of balance. Supply and demand aren't equal. And to Councilman Moore's point, I think, Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what Deb was saying is during an era of low impact fees, we still never developed workforce housing. So increasing work impact fees, therefore, I think she's concluding that's not going to have an impact on workforce housing because nothing ever did. I think it's important that we hear more from the public, because we have, from what the reading material is, we have opposing views. Deb's point is when they were low, we still didn't have workforce housing. And I've read other articles that have supply and demand curves, which is right down my alley. And it shows that if you increase impact fees and the supply of houses go down, which further aggravates the imbalance between supply and demand. So I'm all for learning a little bit more today. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Yeah, there's a few things that have been set up here that it tells me that some people don't have an exact understanding of what an impact fee is. Let's all agree that we have no choice. We have to provide police and fire, and we have to provide police and fire to the areas that are new, as in North Prescott. I think we can all agree on that. The minute that you decide to not impose these impact fees, you are putting this burden on the long-term taxpayer in this community. These impact fees are only put onto a new custom home or a tract or a pad, a planned area development. It is not put onto somebody who has lived here for years. We need this money to help mitigate the impacts of growth. So it's just the opposite, Brandon Montoya. If you decide to keep this artificially low, you are literally allowing the developers with a new home to pocket that money, and you put the burden onto the long-term taxpayer. So you're essentially not helping the cause. You're adding more to their bill because they're still going to have to pay for it. Now, let's talk about the workforce housing condition. We have 3,500 building projects, or units, I'm going to say, not building projects, coming up that are in the pipeline, as you see when community development gives us that report. 3,500 different units. That's apartment complexes, that is single-family homes, that is townhomes. Not one of them, not a one, can be qualified as a workforce housing a community or a project. So the fact that's a fallacy when somebody, it's a completely flawed way of looking at this. If you reduce the impact fee because you think you're going to bring more workforce housing to this community, look at where we are today. We've literally had no impact fees for fire and police. We have zero workforce housing. I'm on the committee. We have people, in fact, we have a general contractor right now that just brought to us last Wednesday a workforce housing model as slim as you can make it, and it does not pencil out. It doesn't pencil out. Reducing this impact fee is not going to help workforce housing. And by the way, a model of the companies such as Gorman that are actually doing workforce housing in other municipalities, and they're doing it successfully, what they're doing is they're going to the municipality, in addition to grants from the government, when they have a designated project that meets all the requirements of workforce housing, they are receiving grants. And some communities, and we can do this too, are absorbing the impact fees and paying it out of the tax dollars of the community that's been here forever. We can choose to do that as a council even today. But why would you take away the ability to bring an impact fee to the city from somebody that's building a $500,000 home and up? There are no workforce housing communities under construction currently. So don't take away the impact fee to the planned area developments that are already passed. And I keep using Deepwell Ranch as an example. There's not a home in there that's going to qualify for workforce housing. There's none in the Granite Dells, none of it. So you're going to say take away the impact fees because we're hoping that the builders are going to build workforce housing. It's not happening. We are a desirable community. Our past, our history shows that we're desirable. There's nobody building workforce housing. This community is so desirable that houses are being pushed upward. And any realtor can prove that with the past 5, 6, 7 years. The reason we're depressed slightly now in the permit, and we're not even depressed that much. Last time I looked, it was 8%. It's not because of the impact fees. It's because of the interest rate and the amount of materials. So if you decide you want to give workforce housing a perk, basically by taking your constituents' hard-earned tax dollars and giving the workforce housing builder a break, you can do that. You can come to all of us and we can vote to do that. But that is a flawed way of looking at this. If you take away the ability for this municipality to charge an impact fee to all these big developments that have already been approved, there is no workforce housing in them. In the 3,500 units that are already in the pipeline, no workforce housing. So if you want workforce housing to not pay this impact fee, come to us and we can vote to allow that. And the community can vote on that as well. So that's something that we need to put that to bed. That is not going to spur workforce housing. That $8,000 is not going to do anything when you're talking about a $500,000 home. Go look at all of the planned area developments, like the last 3 phases that the Granite Dells just gave to us, the final phases, look it up. It's in that community report. There is not one home that is less than $500,000. So that cannot be categorized as workforce housing. So they need to pay their fair share, and they need to pay it now going into the future. Remember, we won't realize a gain from this impact fee for quite some time, nothing that's worthwhile for a few years. So just keep that in mind. Workforce housing is a whole nother issue. We need workforce housing. This is not the way to get it. Thank you.
Well, I can say when I was on council 5 years ago, when we went through this last rate study, the same arguments about not adopting the recommended levels were presented at that time. 10 years ago, when I was in the audience listening to the council debate that, those same arguments were made. So 5-year over 5-year over 5-year cycle, the recommended impact fees were reduced And because of that, we saw our average road index go down. So we had degrading road conditions. We obviously saw the ongoing decline in our ability to respond to 911 calls because we didn't build any fire stations. We didn't add staffing. We didn't add firefighters. We didn't add police officers. And you can see right here in this calls for service analysis between 2018 and 2025, our non-residential call for service has gone up from 41% to 57%. That means, and it applies to your concerns about our aging average population. We need more public safety resources because more people utilize public safety as they age in place. We look at the cost for commodities. Concrete, rebar, copper, all have gone up very significantly. So if we're going to maintain our ability to maintain these infrastructures, we've got to buy that material to be able to expand roads. I mean, we can't widen the roads anymore. We already took all the easements away from Willow Creek Road. So the only way now that we can deal with increased traffic is by investing in this technology. And I think we're making a lot of progress there. But that's not cheap either. And we need more traffic enforcement. We need more parking enforcement because of the growth that we're seeing in our community. All those things, if they were adopted every 5-year cycle in the past, we wouldn't be dealing with the increasing requirements for us to be able to maintain our growth into the future. We have an obligation to this community, both the new people who have a right to the same kind of protection that current residents have. If we keep this down and we decide to take general fund money to pay down impact fees for development, then we're taking tax dollars from everybody, not just for the new people and the new developments and the new areas that they should be paying the price for. So yes, we're in a high interest rate environment. It's not the highest. I bought a house in Houston in the early 80s with a VA loan. At the time, conventionals were at 18% fixed rate. I got a killer deal at 14%. So yeah, it went up to 7.5. Now they're down into the 6s, and people are starting to refinance again. So the environment and the economy is starting to adjust. But we even know the Fed was expecting to lower interest rates, but they keep seeing the necessity for maintaining rates to be ongoing. So we've got inflationary environment. We've got the commodities that we need to be able to provide. I mean, you even look at the cost of oil at about $78 a barrel now. All of our asphalt and everything is oil-based. That costs that commodity to go up. So we have to respond to where we are now and not expect that some pie-in-the-sky future is going to be way better. If it is, 5 years from now, we'll be proposing a lower number of impact fees. So we have to deal with the reality in front of us. Councilman Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Connie's comments, and I appreciate Brandon's comments and Ted's comments. I do think, though, that it's really important that we be very careful and very calculated in the decisions that we make because of the issue that Lois raised of the changing of the demographics of our community. Our community, the average age, median age, continues to get older and older in this community. And without affordable housing, we know we don't have it. We're going to continue to grow older as a population. And that's going to force people like school teachers or nurses or firemen and policemen to live outside their community. My concern is this. Yes, I agree we need impact fees, but here's my concern. We need to think long-term. If you don't think long-term of the consequences of these decisions, there's what I call a convenience factor. If you live in Prescott Valley, if you live in Chino Valley, where are you going to shop? You're going to shop where it's close to home. I do that all the time. I don't go necessarily where it's cheapest, but I go where it's most convenient because I'm busy and that's my lifestyle. Well, we could say, well, gee, we need to raise these impact fees to cover the cost of future growth. But what's the impact 5 years, 10 years down the road from now when we see our general fund going down because our tax revenue is going down because we have less purchasing happening within the city limits because we're forcing people to live in another community and that's where they're shopping now. And so I just think we need to be very careful and not think of just the immediate need, but the long-term impact of these decisions that we're making as a council.
Okay, do we have any further comment or discussion? Any other public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, I think this is, do we require action on this?
Yes, you need to make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Councilman Gambogi.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Very good. We'll move on to item 10B.
Discussion, consideration, and possible action relating to and clarifying the roles of the Water Issues Subcommittee and the newly created Water Policy Review Committee. We don't have a specific presentation on this, Mayor and Council. In your agenda packets, you received both of the forming resolutions for the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues, as well as the Water Policy Review and Monitoring Committee. There was some discussion when the most recent resolution was adopted regarding some confusion and overlap in the duties and responsibilities of each of these groups. And I received a request from two of our members of council to bring this back for further discussion and potential action by the council on how to move forward with these boards, if we were to keep both boards, eliminate one, kind of refine the focuses for one or both. And so I will leave it to all of you to discuss how you'd like to handle that. And then myself and Joe Young are available if there's specific questions regarding each of these bodies individually.
Well, as you'll recall, I made some very strong statements about some of the decisions that came out of the Water Issues Subcommittee that I felt really applied to the establishment of policy that the ad hoc committee was assigned to be able to make decisions on and bring recommendations to the council. So because they didn't suggest a change in one of the components, that didn't mean that they didn't adopt how the current policy had been established. So I think it's pretty clear that if we're going to have a long-term water policy that we're going to utilize for our water resources in our city in the long run, we've got to have a committee that is constantly monitoring that policy to make sure we do the best with the water portfolio we have, and that we have very knowledgeable people to review that, and we're not dealing with possibly the frequent turnover of council members. As I read in the description of the subcommittee, it currently is assigned to be able to apply the policy from the water policy to water contracts and allocations for building permits and other development questions. It's not there to establish policy in and of itself. So I think it's important to clarify where the policy statements come from, where they end, and then where the Water Issues Subcommittee applies that policy to the applications that come in front of it. So I think that's why we're here discussing this today. I think we probably have some council members that want to comment on it since they brought this issue forward.
We do. I have Councilman Moore listed first on the list of speakers.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. So my concern primarily when we met the last time, 2 months ago actually, when this was discussed, was that we had an ad hoc committee that had more authority than the Sub-Issues Water Committee that had 3 members of council sitting on that committee. So you had a ad hoc committee with individuals who were appointed to this committee, many who didn't even reside in the city's boundaries. They were not residents of the city. They may have been subject matter experts on water, but they weren't even residents of the city. And they had the power and authority to make recommendations over and above the Sub-Issues Water Committee, which had 3 council members on it. And I just felt that was wrong. And I think, it's the city council's duty to set policy. We are a legislative body, and I didn't feel that an ad hoc committee should be given that much authority. It was in that meeting that the standing committee was established. So now we have a standing committee, no longer ad hoc committee, and we have a Sub-Issues Water Committee. So now we have 2 different committees addressing water policy. And in my opinion, we should absolve one of them and have one committee. And I feel like there should be council members on that committee. It shouldn't just be members of the community. So that's why I wanted this to be discussed, because I felt it was handled improperly 2 months ago.
Well, I'm going to respond to that because realize that the ad hoc committee was simply there to analyze our water policy and make recommendations to the council, at which point the council is there to adopt the recommendations or not, or modify them. So that's where the council authority to have the water policy established becomes paramount over and above anything the committee recommendations were. So we never had the committee making decisions on their own. All they were there to do is to analyze and make recommendations. So that applies, that extends the authority to the council. Now, the Water Issues Subcommittee is there to apply the policy once it's approved by the council and established. When applicants come forward for a application for water service. So they take the policy, they look at the application, and they make the decision about approving it, modifying it, or denying it. So that is a clear subcommittee responsibility, and I think that's appropriate. I wouldn't necessarily want a standing committee to then be making decisions on applying water service agreements in and of itself. It's a possibility, I suppose, but I think right now it's working pretty well as long as we keep the delineation clear. Councilmember Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. When I asked to put this item back on the agenda alongside Eric, my concerns were similar to his. I think the other concern I have is, I think primarily what I see is some duplicative nature of these 2 committees, and also creating a layer of bureaucracy that is probably not that useful for the city. And when I say the city, I don't mean just the residents of that city, but I mean the city proper in way of staff. Because what I think some of us take for granted sometimes is that each of these committees require staff people for the city of Prescott to staff them, to provide support to them, to put together agendas for them. And so it's an open question for me whether it's even viable that Public Works continue to staff both of these meetings for both of these groups. I don't know. I'm not going to put Gwen on the spot on it, but I would guess that the answer is they probably have better things to do. And I don't understand. Beyond that, I'll say I think having a committee that is making policy recommendations to council, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. And I guess if we need subject matter experts, I guess we could go hire them, right? I mean, that's what I don't understand, and what confuses me is it seems like a layer of bureaucracy that we're creating that isn't really efficient, and ultimately ends up wasting tax dollars. And for me, that's kind of an anathema to what government's supposed to do. So if it were me, I would kind of tend to agree with what Eric said, which is I think we need to look at and say which one is more functionally appropriate to maintain, and get rid of one of them. From what I understand, we only have one applicant currently for this standing water issue committee right now. And so I don't know, maybe that's the easiest one to get rid of since it's not really fully formed, but it just doesn't make sense to me to continue down this path personally. Thank you.
Councilman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I was super excited as a new council person to get assigned to the Water Issues Subcommittee. If you look at the resolution that was approved back in 2017, the very last whereas, it says, whereas the City Council Subcommittee for Water Issues will assist the City Council in develop policies regarding water issues facing the city and serve in an advisory capacity to the entire City Council. And I was excited about that because I thought I would develop mastery in the topic of water and be able to make a difference for the community in the long run. With the recent clarity that you've provided all of us. And the other thing is that the new water policy that the ad hoc committee had recommended, and then the council went through painfully line by line, item by item, talking through things and making changes. And we finally got it implemented in March. Was that the date? Since then, the Water Issues Subcommittee hardly has any work to do. We review the fact that most of the projects now are administratively approved by staff because the new policy said so. Raising the numbers, things get administratively approved. So if I'm going to be the glorified administrator of administratively approved, I have really not a lot of interest in doing that. And then this, so I think that's when we think about those of us that have been serving on the Water Issues Committee the last few months, we spend a lot of time doing stuff that other committees could be doing, but there shouldn't be two of us working on developing policies regarding water issues. So I think we have to eliminate one. I'm absolutely fine that it be the Water Issues Subcommittee, because I don't enjoy wasting my time and staff's time for 2.5 hours on topics that are going to yet come to the City Council yet again, and that are now going to be handled by an ad hoc committee. So in the simple, the streamlining government, I'd like to be out.
Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. As a city, we have amazing staff that are brilliant and talented. We have Brian Reese, we have Leslie Grazier, who are water experts. We don't need a standing committee to make recommendations when we have city staff that have PhDs and degrees in this, and they can make recommendations. We need to keep, my opinion, we need to keep the Water Issues Subcommittee with council members serving on it and get rid of the new standing committee. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Do we have any public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
Well, it's clear to me after extensively studying water policy throughout this county and even the state. We have the Gila adjudication that's been going on for 50 years, how it impacts the flow of the Verde River, how our relationship is between the county, between SRP and their superior water rights when it comes to the flow of the Verde River, the long-term proposals for the Big Chino Water Ranch, the fact that our well fields are in Chino Valley and as a partner with the Big Chino Water Range contract with Prescott Valley, being able to deal with conservation issues, tiered pricing, etc. I've been studying this issue for probably 7 or 8 years. To have a long-term water plan based upon people that are committed to analyzing these issues over the long term it's very clear that that's a necessary need for the city. And being able to make recommendations to a voting council, I think, is also very essential. To take little snippets of application periods and say, recently we don't have enough applications to justify the time on the committee, is just because you're looking at it in a very, very short term. We've had very large developments that had to analyze their water needs and be able to come up with an application that meets an expectation of efficient use of water. And I think that's why a committee that's committed to a long-term analysis and make recommendations is appropriate. We have turnover in our water department as well. So just because someone has been recently put in that position doesn't automatically make them an expert. And our issue here is the only assured water supply designation in this entire county makes our position even more important to understand that the impacts, the implementation, and the future analysis of our water resources. It's not something that comes from an applicant that is a candidate for city council. We've seen just recently in the last few years candidates for city council that had absolutely no understanding of what our water policy was, our status as an insured water supplier. I remember one candidate at a forum said, I really don't know much about water. Now, if that applicant actually was elected, then you'd be making decisions on long-term policy with someone who had very, very, very little education on it. So I think we do have a lot of people in the community that spend a lot of time looking at that, and our applications for this committee have not closed yet. So we'll see if we can put together a decent number of well-qualified, involved citizens that are willing to take a long-term look at managing and recommending policy, and for the council to be able to implement that in the best interest of our community and our community at large. I mean, even though we want to make policy based upon our own city's policy, we have to realize that our policies expand far beyond where we are. We've had exceptions given to water outside city limits that have a big impact on our water portfolio. So understanding how that applies, there's so many different complex components to our water policy. It's important that we have people that understand it. And I value the information and the recommendations we get from our own water division within Public Works. But again, it takes a lot of study and a lot of time to really have very capable, not only in current requirements, but past requirements. I mean, let's realize that Governor Bruce Babbitt was the one that really established our long-term statewide policy. And what was that, Gwen, 1980? Pretty close. So it's not something that you can just jump in and read a couple of white papers and then feel that you have a good understanding of how our city's water portfolio is going to be managed now and then in the future. So I'm off my soapbox now. Councilman Gambogi.
Mr. Mayor, have we reached the point where someone is ready to make an action?
I think we've asked for public input and we've had multiple opinions voiced here on the council. So I think, I'm ready to hear a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we dissolve the standing committee and we retain the Water Sub-Issues Committee.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 4-2.
Next item on our regular agenda.
Presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding sculpture art donation and site location. Mayor and Council, this is coming before you as a follow-up to some recommendations that were made by our Civic Enhancement Committee regarding an art donation. Where's Joe Baines? There he is. Joe's here to answer some questions that you may have, any questions that you may have regarding the donation of the sculptures. And Joe can address the city's policy regarding art donation. And everything was included in your agenda packet as well regarding the sculptures, but we're available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This comes on the heels of a recommendation from the Civic Enhancement Committee to accept the art donation. There's two things in front of you today. One is whether or not to accept the donated art, and the second is the placement of that art. So there are two separate actions that you're looking at here. A lot of discussion in the Civic Enhancement. We've had a lot of discussions subsequent to this too about possibly a sculpture garden where sculptures could be placed in a central location, which from the maintenance perspective, would be much easier for us to maintain. I think it would be more appealing to the general public in that it would have more diversity in the art. So again, there's two actions in front of you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilman Moore, I see your request to speak.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. So I serve as the council liaison to the Civic Enhancement Committee, and I've been attending those meetings, and I've been present when there's been discussion regarding the donation of art as well as the placement of the art. And I appreciate that Mr. Baines has stated that these are really two different issues, and I wholeheartedly agree. I personally am very much in favor of accepting the art. I think that is an appropriate recommendation. However, I don't feel that it should be the Civic Enhancement Committee's jurisdiction to dictate the location of that art. I think that should be a city council action. And my concern with their recommendation is that that art be placed along the new Granite Creek Trailway. And a couple concerns. Number one, it really is a floodplain. Number two, if this is art that we want people to see, it should be maybe in a more public location where it's more visible to a larger audience. And number three, I think that location is maybe more susceptible to vandalism or graffiti being along the creek. And we don't want that to happen to our art. We want to value our art and take care of it. And so I'm very much in favor, as a council member, that maybe we direct city staff to look at, over time, identifying a location for a sculpture garden. I really like that idea, where we can co-locate donations over a period of time, because we know this is just going to be repeated over and over again. We're going to get more art donations over time. And it would be nice to have a central location where we could put those art in a sculpture garden And so I just want to express my opinion as the council liaison to the Civic Enhancement Committee as I've been attending these meetings. I'm appreciative of the art donation, and I think we should accept it, but I do not think we should decide today on the location. I think that should be to be determined. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, is that a motion? No.
Mayor Pro Tem can't tell me.
I don't know why it's not showing up over there, but so as a longtime designer, I have to say that we have a sort of a vibe, if you will. I heard some young person say that the other day, and I'm going to copy that. In the downtown area, we have a history, Western history. We've got statues with horses. I'm not in favor of bringing this particular flavor into our downtown area. I'm not opposed to modern art at all, but it has to be very thoughtfully placed. I'm not in favor of the area that was decided earlier or suggested earlier for a couple of reasons. I don't personally, as a designer, think it fits there either. But probably more than anything, as a mother and a grandmother of boys, I really worry about these being a climbing situation, and the sharp edges bother me. So I think they need to be in an area where they can be watched and protected. And I've given it a lot of thought. I've thought of all the public areas in the whole city of Prescott. Where would three pieces or more possibly of modern art fit that would not sort of interfere with what Prescott is known for, the Western heritage? The only place I can think of is in the green area behind the library. But again, I think, to Eric's point, I think this really needs to be thoughtfully, and we've got to really look at every single situation with this. This could be a liability in the long run as well. So I do worry about that. But as far as accepting it, I'm probably not crazy about it because it doesn't really kind of go with what our city is known for. I do see the value of modern art again. It's just we've got to place it very thoughtfully, and we've got to really think this through for a lot of reasons. The liability for me when I look at that is the very first thing I think of. Thank you.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with kind of what Councilman Moore was saying. I think these are two distinct issues, accepting there art being one and where to place it. And I agree with the sense that, we need to be careful about where we put it for some of the reasons that Connie can tell me suggested as well. Because, it needs to make sure that you don't want to you don't want to wreck the vibe, as the kids say. So I think I'm in favor of accepting it and a site to be determined later, and I would put that on staff to come back with some suggestions for where the best vibe area for this art is.
Well, I can say that I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I think our historical nature of our community, the Western culture, and the long-term history of our city going back to 1864, and ever since then, we really don't have a location that modern art sculptures would really fit in with our community. Then we add the potential degradation of these outdoor sculptures, whether it's rust or other kind of conditions subject to graffiti and other conditions that would really degrade the positive nature of this kind of modern art. I mean, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I mean, I visited the Modern Art Museum in New York City, and I've been to the Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, and a lot of these places that, boy, a sculpture like that would fit right in. Maybe even Prescott Valley's library. I was just down in Tempe, where they've got a very, very modern sculpture-like performing arts center down there. Boy, it fit right in with that. But I don't know where the heck in Prescott it would be displayed in a way that would be complementary to how people visualize our community and our outdoor amenities, etc. So I think there's the question of liability and just the appropriateness of it. So just because somebody wants to donate a piece of art doesn't mean that it would necessarily be beneficial for the city, or do we have to accept it? Mayor Pro Tem, do you have another question? No? We have public comment?
We do, Mayor. Miriam Foster.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Barbara Nelson, who is the founder of the Trail Art Project, who is currently suffering with COVID and thought it wise not to attend. I simply want to say, as a local artist myself, I just got back from Venice, Italy, and while one wouldn't necessarily think of that as a place for modern art, Peggy Guggenheim built a spectacular and enormous museum to it. So I simply want to add my voice to hopefully encourage you to accept this very fine, worthy modern art, because representing art in the different phases of its development is important to any area. So I would encourage you at least to accept it and then determine where is the most appropriate placement. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
That's all? So I guess we can entertain a motion here. I think probably two things. First of all, do we accept it or not? Secondly, if we do accept it, where will we put it? And if we don't designate a place, then we could designate the committee or Joe Baines to try to come back with a recommended location.
Mayor, if I could maybe just add something, that I think the idea of going and looking at some different locations is a really good idea, and it may change the perspective of, would modern art fit there? For example, one of the areas we sort of looked at, and I, by no means I'm saying this is the final thing, but the Peavine Trailhead off of Sundog Ranch Road there's a big flat area that could become a sculpture garden. Maybe that changes the conversation. So I guess I would ask the city attorney, is there a way that you could accept the art on the condition of the appropriate placement of it?
Yes, in fact, that's contemplated in our art donation policy, whereas there are two different decisions, and you all know that clearly. But if council accepts the art and doesn't choose a location, it goes to Joe Baines' department and then back through the committee to make a determination on location. If no location is able to be identified at that point, then the art reverts back to the owner. And that's kind of clear in our policy.
Well, thank you for that clarification. So do we have a motion here?
Mayor, I'd like
This
to move.
motion, number one would be to approve or deny the acceptance of the donation itself.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we accept the donation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 5-1.
Mayor, can I make a motion that we deny the current site and request further study of a location?
You can certainly make that motion. Are you making that motion?
I just did that. Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Well, I think that concludes our voting meeting today.
Actually, Mayor, sorry to interrupt you. We do have one final item, which is Council Liaison Board Committee
that's
Commission
right.
updates.
That's right.
I did not receive any updates. Most of our boards and commissions have been on a little bit of a summer hiatus along with our council. Unless any of you have something that you'd like to provide as an update, I'll just go ahead and review through our upcoming BCC meetings. Okay.
Please do. Thank you very much.
So we will have a meeting of the Municipal Property Corporation Board on August 19th. The General Plan Committee is currently conducting the review of the draft plan, and we'll meet twice more this month on August 21st and August 28th. September 3rd, the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues will reconvene and meet. September 4th, the Mayor's Veterans Commission will meet. And on September 9th, the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Traffic Advisory Committee will meet. I'd also like to remind the public that we do have 2 boards currently that I am seeking applications for. Our Building Safety Advisory and Appeals Board has a couple of vacancies, as does our Industrial Authority Board. And those applications can be accessed on the city website. If you have any questions, you can contact my office.
Thank you so much. So we'll conclude this meeting with a quote from one of my favorite founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. So the bottom line is pay attention, be educated, be involved, and we'll be able to maintain our freedom and liberty. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.